I've tested 5 backpacking chairs in the wild. One caught me off guard. Another was a disaster. And the one I swear by now never leaves my pack. Backpacking chairs feel like a luxury until your knees ache or the ground's soaked. I used to skip them. Most hikers think they're too heavy, too bulky, or just not worth it. I did too. But after hauling 5 different chairs through real trips, I found out how much comfort depends on your priorities and how wrong I was about some of them. Here's what I still carry, what I regret, and the chair I'll never take backpacking again. So first up, the Helinox Chair Zero is kind of a gold standard in backpacking chairs. It weighs just over a pound, packs down close to the size of a Nalgene, and gives you real back support and actually lifts you off the ground like a proper chair. It's ridiculously comfortable for the weight. You can lean back, eat dinner, relax at camp, or just give your knees and hips a break after a long day. And yeah, being able to sit down without getting your butt wet or cramping up in a squat, that's a level of comfort I didn't realize I'd appreciate this much. The setup is quick. The poles are shock corded together like tent poles, so they just snap together in seconds, and then you stretch the fabric over the frame. Done. It's way easier than it looks, and once you do it a few times, it's muscle memory. The frame is surprisingly sturdy for about a 1-pound chair, but one thing to know, the legs can sink into the ground if you're on soft ground like loose dirt, mud, or sand. That's probably the one real downside to the design. But Helinox does make a ground sheet attachment that spreads the pressure out and keeps the chair stable even on those surfaces. I picked one up and it definitely helps, but it's sold separately and does bump the price up even higher. And yeah, this chair is not cheap. At around 150 bucks, it's definitely a splurge. But for some folks, the comfort payoff is worth it. I eyed this chair and held off for a long time. I tried a few different options that we'll get into in a moment, but I always missed that mix of back support and elevation. Eventually, I caved and bought it, and I haven't looked back. Now, I bring the Chair Zero on every trip. Still technically a luxury item, sure, but one that has fully earned its place in my kit. But if the Chair Zero is my MVP, this next one's the scrappy underdog that somehow keeps making the team. And real quick, if you want more hot takes on gear and overall backpacking advice, I drop new videos every week, so feel free to sub and join the crew. Now onto the complete opposite end of the spectrum. This thing feels like it shouldn't work, but somehow it does. The Stansport folding camp stool is probably the most underestimated piece of gear I own. It's one of those items you don't expect to love, but after a few trips, you start wondering why it doesn't get more attention. It weighs virtually the same as the Chair Zero, right at 1 pound, but it costs around 30 bucks. That's nearly 1/5 the price, with way more versatility than you'd expect for something this simple. Unlike a phone sleep pad or ground level chairs, this stool lets you get fully off the ground. That means dry shorts, less crouching, and actual knee relief at the end of a long day. If you've ever tried to cook dinner while balancing on a rock or squatting in the mud, you'll understand fast why this matters. Now, there's no back support, so it's not a chair that you're gonna lounge in for hours, but when it comes to actual function, camp chores, gear sorting, changing layers, tying your shoes, it's kind of perfect. Setup, super easy. You just flip it open and sit down. If you're cold, tired, or just don't want to be dealing with putting together all the different pieces like you do with something like the Chair Zero, that instant usability comes in clutch. I usually strap mine to the outside of my pack, and then it's just right there whenever I need it. And in cold, wet, or rocky conditions, sitting directly on the ground is just not ideal. This stool gives you that clean separation from the terrain without adding too much bulk or complexity. You're upright, stable, and dry, and that's a huge comfort boost for just 1 pound. The Stansport folding camp stool isn't flashy, and it doesn't look like much, but it's earned a solid place in my rotation. For the weight and price, it might be one of the most functional upgrades you can make to your camp comfort. And of course, before I ever touched a stool or a frame chair, there was one classic that started it all. The Crazy Creek camp chair was actually my first real backpacking chair, and I've gotta say, I still kinda have a soft spot for it. It gives you real back support without the bulk, weight, or setup hassle of frame chairs. It's also just around 1 pound, so it's light enough to justify on most trips. And at around 45 bucks, it's a solid value if you want comfort and back support without shelling out over $100. And setup is just about as instant as the Stool. You just unfold it and sit down. Now, you do need to adjust the straps a little bit to get your preferred angle of back support and find the position that's most comfortable for you. But once you dial that in, you can just set it and forget it. From that point on, you've got a super easy seat for quick breaks, meals, or just sipping your morning coffee as you lean back and take in the views. And it does something that most backpacking chairs can't do. It works anywhere. You can use it inside your tent, on rocky terrain, on platforms, even inside AT shelters. There's no legs to balance, no stability issues, just a stable, ground-hugging seat with a backrest wherever you are. It folds flat so it can be easily strapped to the bottom, top, or the sides of your pack. This style of chair served me well for a long time, but eventually I wanted to get off the ground entirely, especially on trips where the ground was cold, wet, or uneven. And that's the point where I switched to the Stansport stool for the added elevation. But even now, I still think the Crazy Creek chair holds up. It's simple, decently affordable, and a lot more comfortable than just sitting on a rock or leaning against your pack. But for all the times I don't want to carry an actual chair, I still always bring something to sit on. The Therm-a-Rest Z Seat isn't technically a chair, but I bring a sit pad like this on every single trip, no matter what else I'm carrying. The one I use is actually just 3 panels cut out from an old Therm-a-Rest Z Lite sleeping pad. They weigh about 2 ounces, and the Therm-a-Rest Z Seat is totally affordable at around $30, and you can also find some budget versions available online. At first glance, it doesn't look like much, but it serves way more purposes than you'd think. Yes, it gives you a dry, insulated place to sit for lunch, breaks, or around camp, but it's also a multifunctional piece of gear that works as extra insulation under your sleep system, especially if you underestimated the overnight temps or your pad just isn't quite cutting it. It also doubles as a clean surface to organize gear, a kneeling pad for water filtering or cooking, and even padding inside a frameless pack. I've used mine as a windshield, a pot rest, and even a backrest against a tree. It folds up accordion style, so it's easy to stash in an outer pocket or lash to the top of your pack for quick access. And crucially, since it doesn't absorb water, you're not dealing with a soggy foam sponge if the ground's wet or if it rains. I use this thing constantly, even on trips where I bring a full chair like the Chair Zero. It's just too useful to leave behind. So if you're going ultralight or just want to keep things simple, the Z Seat is a classic. It may not be glamorous and it's definitely not a real chair, but it earns its place every single time. But of course, not every chair I've tested earned a permanent place in my pack. The MARCHWAY folding chair is the one chair I'd never bring backpacking again. I picked this one up off Amazon as a budget option. And to be fair, it wasn't a bad product in terms of build or comfort. And there are dozens of other chairs in this category. Same style, same weight, same price. They all look kind of like the Chair Zero, but come in at about 1/3 of the cost, but more than double the weight. This one costs about 35 bucks, but it weighs around 2.5 pounds. On paper, that doesn't sound like a deal breaker, but on the trail, that kind of weight becomes noticeable fast. Setup is virtually identical to the Chair Zero. It's a shock corded frame, fabric seat. It's pretty stable once it's assembled. And it is super comfortable. It has solid back support, and I had no issues with durability. It does what it's supposed to do, but the weight to function ratio just isn't ideal for most backpackers. Now, if you're okay adding 2 to 3 extra pounds to your setup and you want a true camp style chair, something like this might be worth it for the right person. And for car camping, trailhead chilling, or just a portable backyard chair, it's totally fine. But if I'm hiking more than a mile, it's just a bit outside of my weight comfort. It's not that the MARCHWAY is a bad chair, it's just not the best fit if you're trying to keep pack weight low. If you're counting ounces and trying to keep your base weight manageable, this one usually won't make the cut. But that's basically the trade-off with all chairs out there. Comfort is great, but only if it justifies the weight. And if you're trying to avoid wasted weight or wasted money, watch this next video where I break down the backpacking gear I totally regret buying so you don't make the same mistakes. All right, take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next one.